13, we go live with Jorge Gestosos to bring us what we can expect in Ecuador's presidential runoff. Hello, Jorge, do you hear me?
Yes, we are here following very closely the events of the day. Most definitely, we are about 48 hours away from the runoff, and the atmosphere is completely different this time compared to the first round, where Luisa González has much more chances to become the new president of Ecuador, because during the different 2 months between the first and the second round that took place, she got the approval, the support, the endorsement of the movement, indigenous movement of Pachacutic, that accounts for about 5% of the votes in the first one. We're talking about that 44% was an even result for the two main candidates, Luisa González and Daniel Noboa at 44%, and the third candidate was from Pachacutic, Leonidas Isa, with 5%. So if you add up 44% from Luisa and 5% of the indigenous people, were close to the 5%, but on top of that, she got another endorsements, and that most definitely are putting her in a very favorite situation. On the other hand, in terms of unusual thing, was that part of their security team from Luisa González has been removed from orders of the president, Daniel Noboa. We're talking about a situation where a country with the highest rating of assassination and violence, mostly in the region. We're talking about, so far, over 2,000 assassinations in the first 3 months, about 27 assassinations a day, and that percentage is about as twice as it was in the same period of 2024. So to remove their security guards to the candidate for the presidency that the polls put her as a favorite candidate, it's a very significant decision from the part of the president candidate, Daniel Noboa. We are thinking, according to what the National Council of Electoral says, that the results, polls here close at 5 p.m., and they expect that by around 9 p.m. they could announce a tendency that could be almost irreversible. So if everything goes as expected, before midnight on Sunday, we will have our results, and in that case, will be very close the way we are following this election, because definitely there's a big question marks in many areas, but the most important thing is that the denunciation of the analysts is that this election, as the previous elections here in Ecuador in the last 8 years, was not taking place with a level field. It is an inclined field in favor of the president candidate, Daniel Noboa, that is not respecting the institutions, that is using the government on his favor, that is using also the social networks also with a limited amount of money. We are talking that this is the son of the richest person in the country, of the banana conglomerate, the group Noboa, that also apples and opens the big question mark that has been denounced. There is the largest export of banana of the country, leaving from a port that is allegedly controlled by that group, and in those bananas are being found in Europe containers with cocaine. So the big question mark is until which point the group of Noboa that is related to the candidate is related to that drug trafficking. So we're following all that, and we will be sharing it with you throughout the day. We'll get back to you now.
Thank you, Jorge, for your remark, and we'll be with you on our next news brief for more information. Thank you. In the Dominican Republic, officials are working to identify victims of the nightclub roof collapse that killed at least 220 people as crews completed the day-long search on survivors earlier on Thursday. In this regard, it was informed that all the bodies has been removed from the site and the debris has been cleared, while family members of victims remain at the forensic pathology offices waiting for information of their missing relatives. In this context, relatives of the victims accuse authorities of delays in releasing the bodies after they have been waiting for more than 72 hours in a tent set up at the main entrance of the coroner's office for the remains of their loved ones to be delivered.
The process here is too slow, too slow. I don't even have words to express what this is like, because they are going to hand our relatives over to us in bags, just to bury them right away, because they are unrecognizable, with the bad smell of decomposition. We won't be able to hold a wake for them, not even for a couple of hours.
In this sense, we go live with our colleague Jorge Gestosos for more information about these upcoming presidential elections in Ecuador. Hello, Jorge. What else can you tell us about these upcoming presidential elections in Ecuador?
We are here less than 48 hours away from the runoff for the beginning of the second round of the elections in Ecuador, and there are pure speculations about possible which polls are the more precise. There are some of them that gives the majority of the votes to the candidate Luisa Gonzalez with a comfortable margin between at least 5%, and other ones believes that that margin is narrower. Nobody really knows what's going on, but there are some votes from the undecided. Also, the votes are blank and refused the vote. And also, what is going to be the behavior of the Ecuadorians living overseas that are going to start to vote in different parts of the world, like Australia, very soon because of the time difference. There are many of them who live in the United States and also in Spain that could play a role if at the moment of counting the votes, the margin are very narrow. And here, the speculations start to be what is going to happen. If the margin of victory is very narrow, if the one who loses is going to accept the results or is going to question the results, if some of them could eventually claim fraud. There's something that we really hear pretty often here in Ecuador. So there are, anyway, very much enthusiasm and the people in the streets. The city is absolutely, we're talking about Quito here, the capital. It's very quiet, very organized. We are living the first day of what they call the electoral silence, because yesterday, Thursday at midnight, the electoral campaign finished with the electoral acts, both candidates in the city that is the most populated. We're talking about Guayaquil, both of them, Luisa Gonzalez and Daniel Noboa, had their final stages over there. There's also some questions that, for example, we have learned that early this morning, the custody, the security of the candidate Luisa Gonzalez from the armed forces have been rechanged, meaning that the team that she was having throughout all these days at the very last day, at very last moment, if you want, in the last 48 hours, has been changed for a new crew, and she is absolutely denouncing that because she says that she has received many, many threats, live threats, and even her family, and the fact that changing their security, their lifeguards, and the people who she really feel comfortable with, was sending a very, very, very discomfortable message. She definitely blamed President Daniel Noboa for that action, being said that it's absolutely a way to act, trying to project himself that he is the one who decide what and when is going on in Ecuador, the denunciation of the lack of respect of institutions and the lack of respect of the rule of law. For example, he was not supposed to be a candidate and the president at the same time, and he didn't respect that. The same thing with the naming the candidate of the vice president, that he, by decree, replaced and in an act that is absolutely totally partial. So that had created a reputation that here we are having signs of an authoritarian leader, and for many, many people, they believe that prolonging him in 4 more years could create even a much more conflict situation, especially because the insecurity is very, very high, unemployment very, very high, and also environmental issues like an oil spill, the largest in the history of Ecuador, that happened a few days ago. It's still out of his radar. He didn't show up in the province of Esmeraldas and that. So all that is taking place, and in the case of Luisa Gonzalez, she is very hopeful that this time the blame game of blaming everything possible thing that goes wrong in Ecuador is blamed to the correísmo. Definitely it's not going to work this time. We get back to you now.
Thank you, Jorge, for the information. We'll stay tuned with you for more in. U.S. marks on Friday is the 23rd anniversary of the failed right-wing coup against Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez in 2002. The commemoration was held at the Venezuelan Embassy in Havana with the attendance of representatives of various Cuban government agencies and organizations of solidarity with the Bolivarian nation. The participants highlight the role of the Venezuelan people and patriotic soldiers in fooling the coup and bringing back Chavez to his position as elected president of the republic. In this regard, on April the 8th, 2025, music fell silent with the tragic death of Ruby Perez, the most powerful voice in merengue. The musician was performing at the Jatsa nightclub in Santo Domingo at the time when the ceiling collapsed, claiming more than 200 lives. Our correspondent Days into Sands with the details.
The National Theatre became a shrine. There, amidst flowers and songs, the people bid farewell to their idol, the coffin covered with the flags of the Dominican Republic and Venezuela as a symbol of Ruby's love for both nations.
I am overwhelmed by the event. We lost our great idol, Ruby Perez. We lost many people, neighbors of our country, many, many people. I've got a broken heart. I think the owners of the nightclub should have made sure there weren't any failures. They should have prevented that incident, although when God commands, there's nothing we can do. However, if the collapse was for a failure, the owners could have avoided all those deaths.
Ruby not only conquered his homeland, but also Venezuela adopted him as its own. Subsequently, he reciprocated in love and memorable performances. The Dominican people loved him, but his music has even crossed borders, uniting hearts beyond the Caribbean.
For many years, when I was a child, I had always seen Ruby Perez in Venezuela in all his performances on our TV channels, and I always considered him as a Venezuelan artist. My anecdote is that when I arrived in the Dominican Republic, I got to know he was born there, because Ruby Perez was always a Venezuelan for us.
Roberto Antonio Pérez Herrera, alias Ruby Pérez, was born in Jaina in 1956. Ruby dreamed of being a baseball player, but an accident led him to discover his true passion, music. He studied at the National Conservatory, and he stood out in both Los Hijos del Rey Band and the Wilfrido Vargas Orchestra before the start of his successful career as a soloist in 1987. With hits such as Volveré, Enamorado de ella, and Buscando tus besos, Ruby Pérez became the ambassador of merengue. His gold and platinum records in Venezuela and international awards are part of his legacy. In his last farewell, his fans came and sang his tracks to remember him with the joy that characterized him.
Y te juro por Dios que no voy a llorar. Si te quieres marchar, yo no voy a impedir tus sueños de volar a un mundo más feliz.
He was giving his last farewell with sorrow, but the people remembers his life. Amid tears and songs, the people bid him farewell, recognizing him as he always was, happy and craving for his loved ones. Ruby Pérez not only left a mark in music, but also an imprint in the souls of those who loved him. Ruby Pérez, the voice that made the world dance, now sings in eternity. His legacy lives on in every note, in every heart that beats to the rhythm of merengue.
Para teleSUR, Daisy Toussaint, República Dominicana.
In Venezuela, the Ministry of Electric Energy denounced through a press release a new terrorist attacks against the equipment of the National Electric Corporation, Corpoelect. The community expressed that today, Friday, April 11, we denounced that our national electric system was suffered a new terrorist and fascist attacks. However, the situation was attended to and the system was immediately restored. At this hour, we informed the entire country that 3 individuals have been arrested, have been identified as the perpetrators of this evade, and everything points to the extremist sectors of the Venezuela right wing that wants to harm the Halloween holiday of our people. And in the context of the presidential runoff in Ecuador on Sunday the 13th, we go live with Jorge Gestosos to bring us what we can expect in Ecuador's presidential runoff. Hello, Jorge, do you hear me?
Yes, we are here following very, very closely the events of the day. Most definitely, we are about 48 hours away from the runoff, and the atmosphere